Cathy arrived home with Andrew leaving her shopping bags by her doorstep. Such a good shot, the detective said to himself when he continued tailing Cathy and Andrew.
The private detective came directly to Philip's office to report what he found out. See these, Mr. Warren? As I suspected, your bodyguard has something to do with your missing girl. He laid down on his desk the shots he took as proofs of Andrew's deceit.
Philip looked at the pictures and his face showed disappointment and anger. That scumbag. Of all people. Where is this place? The detective told him that Cathy is living in Torrance and that he took an effort to know who she was living with. She was living with a schoolteacher. Her name is Nancy Gomez. Afterwards, Philip paid the detective, and once alone, he couldn't take his eyes off. The photos and trembling in anger, he almost crumpled the pictures. He summoned his secretary to his office and told her to contact Andrew to see him immediately at his villa. Then he asked for his bodyguard to come to his office at once. Once Andrew arrives in the villa, bring him to the garage and detain him there until I arrive. If he asks too many questions, remain mum. Am I understood? His man nodded.
That evening, Andrew came, and when he got off from his car, Cliff met him and directed him to the garage. He was told to wait for the boss, which made Andrew puzzled and edgy by just the way Cliff and the other security acted. They all just stood there, leaned on the wall behind him, saying nothing, while Cliff stood by the door, glancing at his watch from time to time.
Sooner than later, Philip arrived. He told one of his men to bring in some food and drink for both him and Andrew. He acted calmly since Philip was acting normally. In his mind, maybe he just wanted for an update about Cathy, he thought confidently.
Philip put up a smile on his face, though inside him was raging with disgust. Let's have our snacks first. I'm sure you're hungry just as I am. Then after a bite, Philip asked, How's your day, Andrew? Any news on your assignment? Andrew confidently said that he was still looking for leads. Philip's brows furrowed and stared at Andrew with an inquisitive look which made him feel uncomfortable. Philip put on the table the pictures, passed to him by his private detective, and with a blank face, raised towards Andrew's face, then said in a cold, gruff voice, See this? Where is she, Andrew? Then Andrew was caught, surprised.
Andrew felt uneasy, for it caught him by surprise. He replied, stammering, I don't have the slightest idea, Master Philip. I'm still looking.
Oh yeah? Philip was agitated and showed more pictures. Aren't you in this picture talking to her? Philip stood up and raised his voice angrily.
Why are you lying to me, Andrew? I trusted you, and this is how you show your trustworthiness, by putting tricks on me? How dare you, Andrew? How could you? Philip was glaringly shouting, which made Andrew look defenseless out of guilt.
Then Andrew spoke up. I have no intention to trick you, sir. I'm just trying to help Cathy in her predicament until I could sort out on how to bring her situation to you. And besides, it was your fault that this happened.
Philip was stunned. He was silenced and no words would come out of his mouth. Then, having calmed down, he eventually spoke and asked, What did she tell you? Philip turned to his men and told them to leave.
Andrew explained to Philip that she never said anything to him. It's just that she asked me to drop her off at the drugstore for her essentials until I saw with my own eyes that among the items was a pregnancy test kit. It was Meredith who told me after that Cathy was conceiving.
Meredith was called in and was asked how much she knew of Cathy's situation. That day that you left to Malaysia again with Selena, I felt that she got hurt when I told her that Selena was your fiancé and that you got reunited after falling apart for years. I said that maybe you both returned for your wedding preparations. That was the time I discovered she's pregnant when I followed her to her room crying. But she thought it was only an acid reflux. So that same day after she returned home did I found her holding the strip, and was so emotional, confused, and scared. Cathy was afraid that she may be the cause of your split once again with Selena, that she would not like to ruin your wedding. And she feared that if that would be the case, you might force her to rid of that thing growing in her, and she couldn't let that happen. She said she needed to get out of here and hide completely from you, for she will raise the child in her womb alone.
Philip turned away from them, for he couldn't help the tears welling up in his eyes. With his back turned against them, he was all choked up, then spoke. Why have you told her that Selena was my fiancée, whom I am to marry, when we had not announced anything? Your careless assumption only made things worse, and now she was gone for fear that I may be furious and upset her. Why would she had thought that I will rid that growing child in her?
Meredith was on second thoughts if she would reveal what Cathy told her. But because Philip was already on the verge of irritability and anger, that she said in a nervous tone, Because you forced yourself to that poor girl. And so she said it strongly.
It was early in the morning when Philip commanded his men be ready for an urgent task. He told Cliff to get Meredith and Andrew and have them ride with his entourage to lead the way to Torrance, and he's behind them to follow. Once there, he ordered Meredith and Andrew knock on Nancy's door, and as they stood there to be greeted, Philip walked over and stood behind them unnoticed. Cathy opened the door halfway and was surprised to see Meredith and Andrew, who were apprehensive at meeting with Cathy, and when she came out gladly to meet them, out came Philip with the surprise on their faces. Philip stood there, smiling hesitantly, then spoke gently. This is for my special girl. I missed you so much, Cathy, he said, handing her his gifts. Cathy was surprised with unspoken words. You should have not run away from me. If you only knew how much I've suffered when I lost you. Please come back to me, my sweetheart. Cathy froze. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then suddenly, Philip took her hand and kissed it. Everyone around them were awed. Then all of a sudden, Philip scooped her into his arms and carried her on his shoulders to keep her away from them. Cathy was fighting off, but he walked hastily towards the backyard of the house, where trees and other greenery surrounded them both. Philip carefully and lovingly brought her down and embraced her with deep feelings of love and affection. Cathy was in tears and reciprocated his warm embrace, saying, How I missed you, Philip. Philip knelt before her and brought out a tiny box and showed it to her. Then he said, Will you accept this ring to become Mrs. Catherine Warren?
Cathy's hand was trembling when she reached out her hand and replied, Yes, Philip Warren. I wanted you to be my husband forever. Then Philip puts the diamond ring on her finger and said, You and I forever, with our child. I love you so much, my runaway bride.
Did you like my story about life's drama that happens in real life situations? Well, it is not an ordinary thing, but I put in some spices to make it more romantic and more interestingly fun, which writers like me could entice your taste of romance. But anyway, life is not all a bed of roses, but life is full of drama we couldn't do without. I hope you like my storytelling and do follow my daily life drama stories. It keeps me motivated. Thank you.
Follow me. Please subscribe
At Victoria Mare Novel.